Hey APUSH, I am here and I'm going to walk you through this DBQ rubric so you know exactly what you need to do to prepare and write the world's most amazing DBQ. Alright, so this is the same rubric that is used no matter what question you get. I will kind of walk you through the different strategies here. The first thing that you need to do is have your contextualization and your thesis. Okay, this should really, for the DBQ, they do expect an introduction paragraph. That's where these are going to go. So this should be, look at this, see, not just merely a phrase or a reference. We're talking a couple of sentences. I would say at least 3 sentences here leading into the question, talking about more broadly what's going on around this time. It says before, during, or continue after. I feel like the continue after is really hard. I think it's easier to lead in by going before or even a little bit of during. So you want to set the stage, okay? This is like you're starting your story, you're leading up to it. Thesis. You want a nice, strong thesis. This should be something you can argue. It should not be a fact. It's not restating the question, okay? That is not what you're doing here. It needs to be one sentence. They say 1 or more. Okay, I think 1 is hard enough, so let's keep it 1 sentence. And they say introduction or conclusion. Everybody that I know that has been a grader says it's much easier for the graders if they see it first, right off the bat. So that's how I'm going to train you. I want you to write it in that first paragraph, okay? So now you've got your contextualization, you've led in, you've got your good, strong argument. You are now going to dig into these 7 documents, and you're going to use those documents to work for you, okay? I always say don't be a slave to the documents. Don't let them dominate the story. You're telling the story, and those documents are helping you tell the story. So notice that you need to use at least 6 documents. I will always tell you to use all 7. It's going to be just better to do all 7 because if you use only 6 and you misuse one of them accidentally, guess what, guys? You don't get this box checked. So that 7th document is a great little insurance policy. No matter what, you're going to get this point. Okay? So you have used all 7. Okay? Now, accurately describes the content of at least 3 of them. So just a quote isn't enough here. For 3 of the 7, you've gone a little more in depth and you've described the content of what is in those documents. And then the kicker here is for at least 3 documents. Again, more is better. If you can do 4, that's good, because if you do one wrong, you're still getting an insurance point. So for at least 3 documents, you say the how or the why. What's the document's point of view? What's the purpose? What's the historical situation or the audience? You just have to do one of these, okay? So for 3 of them, you really got to go in depth. I know you spend a lot of time in English talking about A, B, C writing, and that seems to me like it would work for this stuff. So you want to really use those documents. Pick a good quote that you think is going to help prove that thesis, and then go a little more in depth and say, you know, this is the purpose of this document. This is what's happening around it, or the audience is this group of people. You know, something like that where you're just going a little more in depth. They want at least 1 additional piece of evidence that is not in the document. Something relevant. It's got to be relevant. Okay, you can't just pull something out of the air that makes no sense. And it should describe the evidence. You're going to describe it. So you're not just going to throw in a random word, you know, that sounds smart. You want to pick something that's missing. I always think, what's the thing that's missing in the documents? Okay, there's usually something big that they have left out. That's a great thing to put here. And then describe it. It has to be different from the evidence and contextualization. So you can't just recycle your contextualization here. This has to be something else that you haven't mentioned yet that's not in the documents, and you're going to pull it in to get this point. The last one is always the hardest. Okay, this one is just tough. So it's going to take some practice, but you want to show a complex understanding. Okay, now what does that need to do? You could do any of these things. You could do multiple variables of what led up to this. Okay, you could do cause and effect over time. Continuity and change is a big one. So you say, okay, in the beginning of your DBQ, we start in this time period, and this is what life is like, blah, blah, blah. By the time we end, at the end of your document, you have proved that something has changed. Okay, that's a good one to do. Maybe you make connections to other periods. That's going to be easier the farther along in the class we get. You're going to have more periods you can connect, right? But maybe you make connection to other periods. Those are probably the best, easiest ways to get this 7th point. So a good DBQ has a full introduction paragraph with the contextualization and the thesis, and a full conclusion paragraph. Okay, you really should do that. That's where you can put this in. That's where you can connect to other times. You can restate your thesis. Make sure that grader can really see what you're trying to prove. It is, you know, your thesis should have lights coming off the page and like loud music, like that's what the grader wants. So you should definitely know what you're going to prove, and you're going to use all 7 of these documents to prove it. That's how you're going to hit this thing out of the park. All right? So, good luck. And if you have any questions, as always, come visit me and I will help you out.